You okay, buddy?
I think I've been doing cardio wrong my whole life.
That's a really strong opening confession.
I always thought it was all about getting as sweaty as I possibly can and questioning all my life choices and spending at least 10 minutes in the pain cave every single time I do it.
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today.
Are you taking away my pain cave?
Welcome to the Form of Fitness channel. I am Dr. Ben Quist, Doctor of Physical Therapy and a certified strength and conditioning coach.
And I'm Jeremiah Kruger, the fitness director, professional question asker, and a longtime resident of the pain cave.
Today we're going to be talking about the amount of intensity you should be putting into your cardiovascular workouts. More specifically, the different zone system that they have for cardiovascular fitness. What zone you should be spending most of your time in and how you should combine those zones in your workouts each week.
And by the end, I'm simply just trying to understand why my watch tells me I'm in zone 4 and I'm just trying to tie my shoes.
We'll get to that, Jeremiah. We'll get to that. We will.
So let's clear up one confusing part. Some people say that there's 5 zones, some people say that there's 3. Which is it?
Both of those statements are actually correct. Some systems use 3 zones when you're working in the field of science as an exercise physiology. Other systems use 5 zones, but they're just slicing up the same intensities into different little groupings. The system that we typically use in fitness training, in the health club world, the gym world, what you're going to see on cardio equipment, what you're going to get on your Apple Watch and your heart rate tracking devices, is typically the 5-zone system of slicing up cardio intensities. That is the one that we're going to be talking about today.
So let's try to define those 5 zones into something we can all understand that doesn't feel like an exercise physiology lecture.
No lecture?
Maybe not today.
All right. Here are how we look at the 5 zones. It goes from easiest intensity in zone 1 up to the hardest intensity in zone 5. So zone 1 is the easy zone. So you can breathe easily, you're walking slowly, you probably could sing while you were in zone 1, but many people might ask you not to.
That feels targeted.
Zone 2 is where the intensity picks up slightly. It's more purposeful. You breathe a little bit harder, but it's still easy to hold a conversation in zone 2. And really that next level above zone 1, zone 2 is where you build your aerobic base or your cardiovascular fitness levels.
So I'm working, but I don't need someone on standby with an AED.
Exactly. Zone 3 starts to get where it gets moderately hard. You're breathing harder, you can still kind of hold a conversation, but it gets a little bit more uncomfortable. It's sometimes called tempo training. It does have benefits. It can help you sustain a faster pace better, but it produces a lot more fatigue in the body. Moving up to zone 4, now it's getting hard. You can hardly speak. You might be able to get out a few words in zone 4. You're reaching your lactic acid threshold at this point, so you're working very, very hard.
You're entering the pain cave.
You're entering the pain cave, yeah. Zone 4 would be kind of like you're in the pain cave. Mm-hmm. Zone 5 is the kind of highest intensity level. It's what most people would think of like a HIIT interval. So it'd be sprinting as fast as you could go. It would be like you were doing on the elliptical a moment ago when you almost passed out. So it's all out effort. You're not talking. You're extremely focused. It could only be maintained for a short duration of time.
And what about zone 6?
Jeremiah, there is no zone 6 in this system.
Ah, well, zone 6 is where I go when I see someone spending too much time in the squat rack on their phone.
I can understand that.
So what's the best way for someone to determine if they're actually in zone 2?
So many people would do it with like a heart rate watch, but I'm not a fan of that because heart rates can differ greatly for different individuals as to indicating what zone they're in. I always advise my clients and patients to do the perceived exertion test. So it's really about how you're feeling in that zone. So when you're in zone 2, which again is our aerobic base building, foundation building zone, that's why it's so important, you are able to talk easily. And you would have a perceived exertion on a scale of 1 to 10 of about like a 4, okay? So, you're kind of working, but it's something you can sustain for a long period of time. It's not that bad.
Okay, well, what if I wanted something a little bit more measurable? How would I use heart rate if I was going to?
So typically when you're in zone 2, most models will put that at a 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. And the reason that I don't do these types of models so often with the heart rate is because it's very hard to determine what your max heart rate is to begin with, and then you would take a percentage of that. So I still think perceived exertion is the way to go for most people.
So this could explain why 2 50-year-olds doing the exact same workout could have very different experiences and different heart rates.
Exactly, Jeremiah. Genetics, hydration, your amount of sleep you got. There are just so many factors that play into medications, things like beta blockers, and that's why sometimes heart rate isn't the most reliable indicator of how hard you're training.
So my watch is a tool, not a tiny little wrist dictator.
Yeah. So obviously the most precise option to figure out what your zones are is to do a VO2 max laboratory test, but the expense of that and the challenge of that and finding a place to do it just isn't worth I guess the juice isn't worth the squeeze for most adults.
From personally having done it, it is a pretty horrible experience, but it's pretty insightful. So why am I seeing Zone 2 become so much more popular right now? It's all over social media. It's the big buzzword.
So Zone 2 has always been important, but the reason I think that people are focusing in on it a little bit more, taking like a little bit more attention to it, is the fact that it is that zone, if you spend time in it, that it truly builds your cardiovascular foundation and base without creating a lot of fatigue. So it's something you can do a lot of with a lot of benefit that's not that challenging. So to make it a little bit more of a nerdy explanation, which I like, your muscle contains mitochondria, which are like little energy producing factories. Zone 2 cardio really helps them become more efficient and produce energy better. Zone 2 cardio also helps create more blood vessel construction within the muscle tissue itself. So there's just a ton of different benefits that come from it.
So we're basically taking the body's engine and making it larger and more efficient.
That's a good way to explain it. So Zone 2 training allows you to complete a higher volume of training each week and get meaningful benefit, where if you were doing high intensity interval training or spending a lot of time in the pain cave, meaning Zone 3 and 4, you really should not be doing that type of training because it does create so much fatigue and so much wear and tear on the body 5 days a week, like I see some people do in the gym.
Well, not with that attitude.
Especially not after the age of 40, where you have so many other things you have to incorporate into your life, like sleep. You should be strength training. You might have some recreation sports you want to play, like pickleball or tennis. So tons of Zone 3, 4 training mixed into that just isn't a good recipe for success. And it's funny that the recommendation for the American Heart Association has been for like a decade or more now that you get in 150 to 300 minutes of Zone 2 training with 2 strength training workouts a week. So all the influencers online that have been talking about the Zone 2 as some kind of new concept is actually kind of ridiculous, because it's been important, it always has been important, and it's always been the recommendation for a long period of time by credible bodies like the American Heart Association, etc.
All right, let's discuss the people who think exercise only counts if it's painful or if it hurts.
Yeah, many recreational athletes kind of unintentionally spend all their time in Zone 3 and 4, and they're really hamstringing themselves and shooting themselves in the foot because they're not going to get as good of results, because their body is not going to be able to recover in a timely fashion, and they're actually increasing the risk of injury.
I think a lot of people fall into this trap because Zone 3 and 4 feel very productive. You're doing a whole lot of high effort stuff for a pretty good amount of time.
And you're sweating. It feels very psychologically satisfying because you've really challenged yourself, so I get it. Mm-hmm. It's just not the best way to train.
No.
Every workout has benefits, but every workout also has recovery costs. And if you don't put the proper amount of emphasis on the recovery, you're not going to get the benefits. If the intensity of the exercise or the cardio stimulus exceeds your body's ability to recover, you're going to start to see your gains taper off over time. Your legs start to feel heavy, your joints start to get irritated in the morning, your fitness levels start to taper off, and your consistency starts to hurt because your sleep isn't as good. So these are all the things that kind of come with those people that train in those zones all the time. Really good examples would be things like CrossFit workouts, where someone's working out intensely every single day of the week. Many boot camp programs I've seen, they're consistently in that Zone 3 or 4 and high intensity interval training every single time they go in there. Orange Theory is another example of a gym that has absolutely no thought process into how they design their workouts for their people. So that's why I think having this conversation is so important.
Okay, but the workouts look impressive on Instagram.
Which is obviously the most important thing about the workout, right?
That's the only reason we go to the gym.
So thinking of it from the principle of 20% of your training being that harder training, and then 80% of your training being kind of that more moderate Zone 2 training.
So instead of going moderately hard all the time, go genuinely easy most of the time, and then genuinely hard a very small fraction of the time.
Exactly. Easy enough to recover, but with those short, intense workouts that in the week planned as well, so that you get enough stimulus to create that physiological adaptation that we're looking for.
So Zone 3 and 4 seem like this forbidden wasteland. Do we even need it?
Zone 3 and 4 can definitely improve your ability to sustain a consistent medium to higher pace in your endurance activities. For example, if you want to bike faster, longer, if you want to run faster, longer, certainly some Zone 3 and 4 training should be factored into your thought process for your week's training.
And many of your recreational activities and sports are probably putting you in Zone 3 and 4 just from playing.
Absolutely. Things like tennis, pickleball, hiking, all that kind of stuff can get you into that zone. So the argument becomes, do you really need to train additional Zone 3 and 4 time in your workouts in the gym? For many individuals like myself over the age of 50 who are doing recreational sporting activities and looking for just, longevity, keeping good cardiovascular fitness, it could be argued that things like pickleball handle the whole Zone 3-4 thing for me, where I don't even need to train that in the gym.
So Zone 3 and 4 aren't the villain. They just have the tendency to take over the entire movie.
That's right.
We've spent most of this video telling people they need to slow down. Do we really even need high intensity work?
For adults that can handle it, it can be an extremely valuable training tool for them, so yes. HIIT training can definitely improve your VO2 max, improve your athletic performance, and preserve your body's ability to produce these high levels of effort as we age. Most definitely has to be dosed appropriately. So HIIT intervals are going to be now bumping into that zone 5 category.
So what is the appropriate dose?
For most like 30 to 40 plus aged people, one structured high intensity interval training workout a week would probably be about the right place to start. So again, things like Orange Theory or boot camp workouts where that is incorporated every single time you come into the gym, in my mind is a recipe for disaster. A well-trained individual that is getting proper sleep, proper recovery from what they're doing, probably could tolerate 2 doses of high intensity interval training per week. The one trap that sometimes people fall into this with is you need to count your sports as well. So let's say you play competitive tennis, something of that nature. Within a 2-hour match of competitive tennis, you are definitely ticking the box of 3 and 4 in your zone training, plus getting multiple HIIT intervals in that session. So really a competitive tennis match where you're going all out could 100% check the boxes on that type of training for the week.
So here at the gym, when we're teaching our trainers how to effectively dose HIIT training into the workouts, there's a really good book that we use by Martin Gabala called The 1 Minute Workout. And one of his protocols is a simple 3 rounds of 20-second all-out maximum intensity sprints with minimally 2 minutes of rest in between, probably more than 2 minutes if you're really going hard, once, maybe twice a week. That's where he gets the 1 minute workout, 3 rounds of 20 seconds. Your actual activity time in total for that workout is no more than a minute. And that's a really effective workout.
Very good use of time. The sprint intervals don't have to be running. The sprint intervals can be done on a bike. They can be done in a swimming pool. It's just that it's a maximal all-out effort. So one thing to note, you can't play competitive tennis on day 1, do a boot camp workout on the 2nd day of the week, do HIIT training on the 3rd day of the week, and on the 5th day of the week, do zone 3 and 4 training, and then on day 5, do your leg workout and count that as your recovery day. It just doesn't work that way. When you dose the exercise in that type of format, that is where those overuse training injuries come, and actually your overall performance and your goals, improving your cardiorespiratory fitness levels, actually are going to start to decline.
So similar to resistance training, a practical goal is to separate demanding conditioning sessions by at least 48 hours. This is the same thing you do when you're training muscle groups in the gym. For strength training, you take at least 48 hours before you do it again. Let's put everything together. What does an actual week look like?
For a generally healthy adult over the age of 40, here's a general framework. So strength training is always the most important in my mind. So we're talking about cardio, strength training is massive and it needs to be included. Typically that's included 2 to 4 times a week depending on how you're segmenting out your workouts with strength training. Secondarily, zone 2 cardio session should also be included for about 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Lots of times I like to include one very deliberate HIIT session in a client's workout routine if they're up for that challenge, wherever they're at with their orthopedic situation. And being thoughtful about how their recreational activities feather into that weekly plan. So if they are doing things that are very intense in their recreational sports or things of that nature, we factor that in and make sure that we get those into the appropriate buckets for those totals that we're looking for the week.
So you may think that we forgot about zones 3 and 4. We did not. The reality is, if you're not an athlete, you're probably not using this too much. It's going to happen in your sport, so we can count that because sport is not all zone 5 and not all zone 2. You're probably getting it in your activities as well. But from a training only perspective, you don't necessarily need to use this unless your goals are very specific where your cardiorespiratory endurance really, really matters. The average person, you're not going to use a ton of this.
For the average person, many times just having the HIIT intervals and the zone 2 gives you the full spectrum of benefits that you're looking for.
And now, what about a beginner? Where does somebody start with cardio training?
So typically a beginner, I like to start them off easy. Just getting to the general habit of doing cardio training each week. So that could be 2 to 3 easy 20-minute sessions of walking or biking, something to kind of just get it into your general flow of how your week goes. As you get more fit, you start to increase the duration of the cardio workouts, and then eventually add in HIIT training.
So what would your cardio hierarchy look like for somebody who's starting?
So to start off, you just have to stop being sedentary, right? That's the most important first step. Level 2 would be start to accumulate some aerobic activity like the walking or biking that we talked about at a low level that you can consistently maintain that's not too stressful on your body. Third, add in strength training to preserve muscle mass, as after the age of 30 or so, most people start to see that declining. That is one of the most important things you can do for your body, so we kind of feather that in after we get that cardio base building going. After we've kind of done steps 2 and 3, the fourth level would be to do some of that high intensity interval training, to start to put those intervals in 1 to 2 times a week to further increase the results that the person's getting or that you're getting. And then finally, just adjust your plan based on your goals.
So the answer isn't zone 2 instead of strength training or instead of HIIT.
Right, correct. Zone 2 is the foundation, but it's not the whole house. For most adults over the age of 40, the best plan is a combination of all the things we've been talking about.
Strength training,
Mostly easy aerobic work,
strategic higher intensity training,
recreational sports,
and adequate recovery.
So the biggest takeaway in this episode is that you do not need to destroy yourself in every workout to get results. Actually, it's the exact opposite. In many cases, foundation of zone 2 cardio with a sprinkling of thoughtful higher intensity work is the way to go for most individuals.
So you can visit the pain cave, but you just don't want to move in there.
Exactly.
So in summary, train hard enough to create an adaptation, but don't do it so frequently that you can't recover.
Thanks for watching, guys. I want to see you guys moving better, hurting less, and living longer.
Thanks for watching.